Hello and welcome to the main edition of the World News here on TVP World with me, Hashim Kumar. Ukraine's incursion into Russia's Kursk region continues, with reports indicating that Kyiv has taken control of 82 settlements over an area of more than 1,100 square kilometers. This and much more coming up. But first, the headlines. Ukrainian troops are still advancing. US President Joe Biden says a ceasefire in Gaza is closer than ever. One of Europe's largest film festivals is underway in the Bosnian capital of Sarajevo. Ukrainian forces continue their advance into Russian territory despite Moscow sending reinforcements to stop it. Kyiv's offensive is bringing its soldiers increasingly closer to a nuclear power plant on the outskirts of the city of Kursk.
Ukrainian forces are attempting to delay and block the movement of Russian reinforcements into the Kursk region. A key bridge in the town of Glushkovo was destroyed in a Ukrainian strike. Satellite footage shows that a new, temporary bridge was set up within 24 hours. Despite Russian reinforcements rushing to the area, Ukrainian troops are still advancing.
The forces of the operation grouping continue battle operations. In some sectors, we have advanced 1 to 3 kilometers towards the enemy. The fighting is ongoing along the whole front line. In general, the situation is under control. Everything is carried out according to the plan.
The nuclear power plant at Zaporizhia has attracted a lot of attention over the course of the war, with fears that fighting around it could lead to an accident and, in turn, radioactive contamination. Now clashes are nearing another such facility, the power plant at Kurchatov, near Kursk. Russian authorities have accused Ukraine of planning a provocation at the facility in order to blame it on Moscow. The Ukrainian government has called the allegations insane propaganda and says that it has no ability to stage such an attack. While Ukrainian soldiers seem to be optimistic about the prospects of the offensive, the power plant remains 35 kilometers from the nearest village they have captured so far.
It is worth it. Soon everything will be awesome.
The Ukrainian operation in Kursk has forced Russia to redeploy forces away from the Donbas, while Kyiv states the purpose of the operation is to establish a buffer zone meant to protect Ukraine's border regions from Russian strikes. Analysts say that overstretching Russian forces may have been its main goal. Nevertheless, Russian forces are advancing towards the town of Pokrovsk, threatening the rear of Ukrainian units defending the Donbas.
We see that the occupier is suffering losses, and this is beneficial, very beneficial for our defense. This includes the destruction of the Russian army's logistics and the depletion of their reserves. We must inflict maximum damage on all Russian positions, and we are doing so.
One of the most important results of the Kursk operation is the redeployment of Russian aviation. Donbas residents have reported a significant decrease in the activity of the Russian Air Force. What's more, operating in Kursk, where front lines are not clearly established and fighting is still dynamic, carries the risk of flying into anti-aircraft positions. The Ukrainians have reported shooting down multiple planes and helicopters in Kursk over just a few days. Ukrainian troops have also begun distributing aid to Russian civilians living in captured areas. With the establishment of occupational authorities, Ukrainian forces are preparing for a long stay in Russian territory.
Our correspondent Oz Kataji is in Kyiv and has the latest on the situation on the Ukrainian front line. Hi Oz, how has this situation been commented upon in Ukraine?
Well, it's interesting now that we're nearing the second week of the Ukrainian incursion into Kursk. It really is a story of two different weeks. The first week we had very little, if any, confirmation at all coming from Kyiv about what was happening in Kursk. And all we were hearing is what the authorities in Kursk and Moscow were saying about this incursion. Now, Moscow is the one being tight-lipped, and we're getting daily briefings from the president and the commander-in-chief about the situation and how it is developing in the Kursk region. Today, we've heard from Tursky and Zelensky talking about the fact that they've strengthened their position, according to them, inside the Kursk region, and that they had expanded, but without going into details, in what Zelensky calls the stabilized territory. So it does go to show that they are indeed digging in and trying to hold this territory. We do not know how long for or what potential springboard this operation may be used for, but it's clear that the Ukrainians certainly aren't intending to pack up and go home after the territory they've seized over the last 2 weeks. Elsewhere in Ukraine, we've heard there's been an attack in Mirnohrad, killing 1 and injuring 4. So again, attacks across the country, particularly in Donetsk, with Zelensky talking again about the defense of those areas and the constant Russian assaults that they are under. Another line from Zelensky's address tonight, thanking the soldiers in Kursk for the captured POWs that we've seen footage of in the last few days. Very much here the hope in Kyiv that these POWs can be traded for very many of the Ukrainian defenders still in prison in Russia as prisoners of war themselves. Back to you in the studio.
Understood. So lots of moving parts, and I'm sure that you will be keeping our audience informed and up to date. Thank you very much, and stay safe. Poles have had the opportunity to watch their army's newest equipment at a military picnic near Warsaw. The event is part of the celebrations of the victorious Battle of Warsaw of 1920.
Ossów, northeast of Warsaw. This area witnessed some of the fiercest fighting in the Battle of Warsaw.
It was precisely on August 17, 1920, as the Bolsheviks were entering Ossów. That is when they were defeated by the Polish legions.
Work continues on the Polish Army Museum, which is being built here. The facility is expected to open next year. But even today, one could see history be combined with modernity.
By simply looking at this equipment, I feel safer, and let's keep in mind that the army cannot show off everything.
The Polish Armed Forces put some of its newest equipment up on display.
It's good that people, the society, can take a look at what kind of equipment we have, in order to simply have a sense of security.
I've always enjoyed watching Polish military equipment. If it serves the Polish army, it can come from as far as Korea to me.
What we can see here is the most modern military equipment that Poland has purchased in recent years. To my back, you can see the K2 Black Panther tank, a Korean tank, one of 180 ordered by Poland in recent years. To my left, the K9 Thunder self-propelled howitzer, also Korean-made, one of more than 300 ordered by Poland. All of this newest military equipment was presented at the parade in Warsaw just 2 days ago, but today Poles could see this equipment from up close. Marek Steele, TVP World.
US President Joe Biden says a ceasefire in Gaza is closer than ever following recent negotiations between Israel and Hamas. Officials from other Western nations are also hinting at a possible end to the fighting, but the truce is not set in stone just yet.
As of an hour ago, it's still in play. I'm optimistic, not far from over. Just a couple more issues, I think we got a shot.
Are you more optimistic now than you have been in months past?
Yes.
Why?
If I told you that, I'd give away what's going on.
While the US president expressed optimism about a possible ceasefire in Gaza, the negotiations may still take some time. Israel is hesitant to go for a compromise given its military superiority over Hamas. Palestinians, on the other hand, have accused Israel of purposefully targeting civilians. According to the Hamas-controlled health ministry, more than 40,000 people have been killed in Gaza since October last year. The international community wants to see the ceasefire take place as soon as possible. The French foreign minister arrived in Egypt on Saturday to make sure that this happens.
It is now important that the parties to the conflict welcome the proposals that have been made to them and accept, then quickly implement a ceasefire agreement.
While the peace talks continue, Israel also continues to exchange fire with neighboring Lebanon. This particular strike reportedly killed 10 people in the south of the country. Fears of an all-out conflict breaking out across the entire Middle East are adding pressure on both Israeli and Hamas leaders to come to an understanding. At this stage, it is unclear how soon we can expect the ceasefire to materialize.
Several thousand firemen are battling raging wildfires in Turkey. Many blazes have been put out over the last 24 hours, but there are still massive fires taking place in more than a dozen locations across the country.
Turkish firemen are working tirelessly day and night to stop the spread of the flames. Some of the biggest fires are raging in the hills over the city of Izmir in the far west of Turkey. According to Rafał Maszewski, a meteorologist from the Nicholas Copernicus University in Torun, such fires will only rise in intensity due to climate change.
It's been long proven that without climate change and rising global temperatures, we wouldn't have as many fires now compared to 30 or 40 years ago. Scientists have even calculated that the CO2 emissions from wildfires are now bigger than what can be absorbed by the forests.
Polish firemen have helped their Turkish colleagues with raging wildfires many times in the past. They haven't been asked for help this time, but the Polish fire department is ready to assist whenever necessary.
After huge wildfires in Poland in the 90s, we've made great progress when it comes to early detection systems. We have state-of-the-art cameras which allow us to stop the fires from spreading before they become too big of a problem.
Turkish authorities have said the fires are no longer a threat to the nearby population. These fires were most likely caused by someone having a picnic in the forest. Turkish officials urge extreme caution when camping in the woods in the summer.
India's medical workers have begun a 24-hour nationwide strike on Saturday to protest the rape and killing of a trainee doctor at a state-run hospital in the eastern West Bengal state. The 31-year-old was found dead on August the 9th, sparking a wave of protests across the country.
Hospitals and clinics across India are turning all non-emergency patients away as the medical community demands justice for their brutally murdered colleague. The protesters say that the assault highlights their vulnerability and lack of safety inside hospitals and campuses, and demand stricter laws to protect them from violence.
We cannot handle violence or threats to us or our children. We will not tolerate this. We will not stop until the Central Protection Act comes into force.
There is no one here. The doctors are saying they will be on strike indefinitely, and we don't know when it will open.
More than 1 million medical staff are expected to take part in the protests. The police discovered the lacerated body of a 31-year-old trainee at a state-run hospital in eastern Kolkata city on August 9. Autopsy results confirmed sexual assault.
Her mother kept calling her continuously, but she was dead by then. The most painful thing is that from 3 to 10 a.m. no one cared to ask the whereabouts of an on-duty doctor.
A police volunteer working at the hospital has been detained in connection with the crime, but the victim's family alleges that more people participated in the assault.
What we want is justice given to the fellow resident who was brutally murdered, and also a Central Protection Act for protection of the doctors so that there is no further incident happening in future.
The protests spread nationwide in the days after the killing, joined by many who fear for the safety of Indian women. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has called for stricter punishments to be imposed on those who commit assaults on women.
As a society, we must think seriously about the atrocities against the mothers, sisters, and daughters of this country. There is outrage against this. An immediate investigation and strict punishment against those who commit such monstrous crimes against women is important to instill confidence in society.
Sexual violence against women is a widespread problem in India. In 2022, police recorded more than 31,000 reports of rape. Due to social stigma, most cases go unreported, and experts believe the real number to be much higher.
One of Europe's largest film festivals, the Sarajevo Film Festival, is underway in the Bosnian capital. The attendees and viewers worldwide will be able to watch more than 250 films over the next 7 days.
The 30th edition of the Sarajevo Film Festival kicked off on Friday, opening with the preview of some of the most exciting films that will be screened in the coming days. A total of 54 international and regional films will compete for the Heart of Sarajevo Award this year in 4 categories: feature, documentary, short and student film.
Over the years, we have really built a significant network and established trust with producers and authors, and we continue to be a festival that has all its doors open regarding the latest achievements of the authors of the region.
Following Russia's full-scale invasion, Sarajevo opened space up for Ukrainian directors. Some of the Ukrainian films featured in this year's edition include Dad's Lullaby, which follows traumatized soldiers as they return home to their families, and A Picture to Remember, a portrait of 3 generations of Ukrainian women, from the days of the USSR to today. Every year, an honorary Heart of Sarajevo Award is presented to celebrate the achievements of illustrious filmmakers and actors. Palestinian director Elias Suleiman received the award on Friday for his extraordinary contribution to the art of cinema.
We need a Heart of Sarajevo with what's going on around us in the world. Timely because we need to infuse tenderness that is lacking these days around the world, and to give cinema the importance of making the world less violent as it is today.
The first Sarajevo Film Festival was held in late 1995, while the city was under siege. Nevertheless, a shocking 15,000 people, including a handful of international spectators, came to see the screenings. The festival continued to grow and saw an array of Hollywood stars visit Sarajevo over the years, eventually becoming the biggest film festival in Southeast Europe.
And that's all for the news on the hour. But this morning, my colleague Sally Jastrzebska spoke with Bogdan Nahalio, the editor-in-chief at the Kyiv Post, about the current political landscape in Ukraine and its implications. Let's see what he had to say.
Volodymyr Zelensky, Ukraine's president, was elected in 2019, and his first term is supposed to have ended. However, following the Russian invasion and the introduction of the martial law, no election can be held in the country. What is the current level of support for Mr. Zelensky, and does he have any rivals and political opponents? To discuss the current political landscape in Ukraine, I am joined by Bogdan Nahalio, editor-in-chief of Kyiv Post. Hello, sir. Delighted to have you with us. So let me ask you about Ukraine's internal politics, because we are, always presented with this united front because of what's happening in the country. But what is happening within the country?
Well, more or less it is a united front because it's a war situation. Of course, there are grumblings and rumblings beneath the surface. But I would say that on the whole, as a war leader, he has the support from, as the latest polls taken only in May show, he has the support, still solid support of about 2/3 of those people who were polled. So his popularity, or his, shall we say, rating has fallen somewhat, but it's not dramatic in any sense. He doesn't have any one challenger that one can speak of. there are some politicians who are very active and are very critical. They act as if they are unified with him in the war effort, but they are sniping away constantly about the tactics used, about the personnel used, about the corruption that exists, etc. So I think one of the most outspoken is, of course, the former president, Petro Poroshenko. But on the whole, I don't think he has more than what he polled in the presidential election. If he gets 20-25%, that's already a major. I would say that his rating has probably fallen. The old-timers, regarded as dinosaurs now by the younger generation, like Yulia Tymoshenko, they are there, they appear from time to time, but they're not really a factor. I think the main problem is that Ukraine still, as it aspires to be a member of the EU, has not got political parties in the modern European sense. That is, parties with political strategies, programs. What they have traditionally had is parties cobbled together around a leader, whether it's an oligarch or an influential political leader linked to an oligarch, where the money is. And I think that the gap right now is that there are no new faces from among the young generation that have emerged. On the other hand, it is wartime, as we've mentioned, and it's difficult for somebody to openly campaign against a war leader. But let's remember the example of Churchill. Churchill was a great war leader, but he lost the election within a few months of the war ending. The issues were different: social, economic, rebuilding, restructuring. And so I think that until the war lasts, we won't see any drastic changes at the top or in society. But as soon as there's the semblance of a peace and the possibility of rebuilding approaching, then we will see this frantic rush to create parties, leaders emerging, etc.
Right, and can we see Volodymyr Zelensky somewhat dealing with his political opponents? I wanted to ask you about Valery Zaluzhny, right? Because he was regarded as a possible alternative for a while to Mr. Zelensky, but then he was sent to the UK as an ambassador. Now there's talk that perhaps it was linked to this Nord Stream 2 issue. So can we unpack this?
No, I think that's speculation. Look, it's clear that President Zelensky, for all his positive PR capabilities and projecting Ukraine's predicament to the outside world and getting the support, I think his Achilles heel has been that he's surrounded himself with a very small group of gatekeepers, and the preeminent one being Yermak, who is head of the office, but he has no constitutional role and prerogatives, but has assumed the role of de facto foreign minister and more or less as a substitute for the president quite often. That irritates people because they don't want somebody speaking on behalf of Zelensky if they're not empowered to do so by parliament or by the population as such. So Zelensky has this weakness because, remember, before Yermak, for about a year and a half when he was first in office, he had another head of office who was very ebullient, very extrovert, Andriy Bogdan, who he sacked, probably because of tensions with Yermak behind the scenes. So Zelensky has this dependency syndrome on one or two key people. Understandably, he's lonely at the top. He's stretched. He needs to rely. He needs to have a close ally. But the public doesn't particularly like that. With Zaluzhny, I don't think that Zaluzhny was a contender for power. He's not a politician. He's a military man by background. He never expressed any political ambitions. However, his popularity, I think, irked some of those within the circle of Zelensky, and the common belief is that Yermak in particular, and they wanted him like they wanted the Minister of Defense, like they wanted the former Ukrainian ambassador to London removed because they were either too independent or potentially they could be very popular and be rivals, potentially, but not at the given moment. So I think that Zaluzhny has been moved away. He's in exile, very much so. I would be very cautious to buy into what is being said about Nord Stream 2. I think Ukrainians would be very proud if indeed they, and perhaps the Poles or somebody else, were involved. if they pull that off. But let's wait for the dust to settle. We'll find out the truth later. But right now it's speculation.
Absolutely, it is. I mean, the news were quite a bombshell, so definitely we have to wait and see how this thing develops. But you've mentioned the oligarchs in Ukraine. Of course, the Ukrainian authorities are trying to crack down on corruption. So I wonder if we can see some people being particularly dissatisfied with this, perhaps some opposition to Zelensky emerging in this crowd.
It's not from the oligarchs. I think Zelensky has successfully clipped the wings of the main oligarchs. Kolomoisky is still in prison, right? In detention.
He's a supporter, right,
yes.
At the start?
Well, let's say he was a supporter because Zelensky's TV program, his satirical show Sluha Naroda, was being aired by Kolomoisky's channel. But Kolomoisky ended up owing money to Zelensky when the election occurred. As Zelensky said, the guy still owes me 2 million, right? So it's not as if the Poroshenko's camp wanted to present Zelensky as a puppet of Kolomoisky. That wasn't the case. Zelensky is a strong-willed individual who believed that he was the character he had been playing in the comedy show. So he's clipped the wings of several of the major oligarchs. Corruption is coming from different areas now. War, entails heroism, but war creates opportunities for robbery, corruption, mishandling. So right now, with the stream of aid coming in, military and otherwise, with the issue of conscription and avoiding that, of course, there are many opportunities for those who want to make money from that. And hence, I think corruption is not so much the obvious corruption of the rich getting richer, just siphoning it off. It's about opportunistically minded people taking advantage of the war, which is not a specifically Ukrainian disease, right? I think it's endemic to any society at war.
Right, but at the same time, this is the kind of argument that politicians such as, for instance, J.D. Vance could use against Ukraine and providing support to Ukraine. We just recently learned of the Deputy Energy Minister, right, who has been arrested. Will there be more done on this front to perhaps improve Ukraine's image?
Look, let's be frank. Zelensky and his team are under immense pressure, not just from the Americans, but from all of their Western allies, to deliver on the terms, the conditionality on which aid is provided. Meaning, we'll give you aid, we'll support you, but clean up your house, clean up your act. So Zelensky has to be seen to be taking action. And so you can see the arrest or the detention of the former Deputy Energy Minister in two ways. You can see it as, oh my God, yet another one. Or you can say they are taking action even at the highest level, and they're making public cases out of this, showing, you do this, you're going to be... The issue is, will these people ever end up in trial and get sentenced, or will their case just be shunted aside and forgotten, which often happens? And that is what needs to be watched. And I'm sure that Western, kind of monitors are watching that and through their embassies and other factors, and are letting Zelensky know what they think.
Right, I guess time will tell. Bogdan Mihailov, thank you, sir, so much for being with us this evening. Much appreciated.
My pleasure.
And thank you for watching World Talks. Please stay tuned for more here on TVP World.